Hello, welcome to a bit of an impromptu Forest focus. We weren't going to do a podcast today as our live show is out now for everyone to check out. But as ever, there's plenty to talk about. As Nottingham Forest close in on some more top young talent, and Steve Cooper returns to the Premier League in news pretty much no one is happy about. So joining me to discuss all that is Michael Temple. Temps, thanks for joining me at short notice. How are you doing?
Pleasure, mate. When you say impromptu, I'm always prepared. So if you're telling your listeners that you're never prepared, then surely every podcast is impromptu.
Yes, good point. Good point. Well, we'll test how prepared you are shortly with a couple of bits of transfer chat. But the first thing to talk about is Steve Cooper going to Leicester City. Don't normally focus on former managers getting jobs, but it's the talk of the town. It was yesterday on Twitter among Leicester fans and Forest fans as well, relitigating the legacy of Steve Cooper, of course, as is our want when it's between seasons. Lots of opinions. I just found it a bit baffling. I almost muted Steve Cooper on Twitter last night, and I wrote a draft tweet just saying it's all madness the way people seem to view him. I've got my views on it. What do you make of Steve Cooper going to Leicester?
Well, we sacked Steve Cooper, so how can we be upset when he finds another job? He'll get a clap from me when he comes back, whatever team he's representing, because of what he did for our club. Took us from the bottom of the Championship to the Premier League, gave us a day out at Wembley along the way, and survived in his first season. I don't think that achievement should ever be forgotten or undermined by what he does from this point onwards. I've been a little bit surprised by the reaction of Leicester City fans. Again, I think they overestimate that rivalry. Derby will always mean more to me in that sense, but for them, it's the big one. So a bit more spice from their side. How will he do there? It's a completely different profile, isn't it? He's got some older, more experienced players. He's got financial constraints. He's got the issue of the points deduction pending. So tough situation for him to walk into. But fair play to him for waiting, because he could have gone in mid-term at a distressed club and tried to turn something around. But whatever happens with the points tally, he's now going to have a pre-season and the chance to start the Premier League with a clean slate. So looks like a good opportunity to him, worth turning down the likes of Stoke and all these other jobs that he's been linked with in the interim. I'll forever be grateful for what he did for the club, bear him no animosity. And whilst I ultimately, hope that he's relegated with Leicester, I hope he's given a warm reception when he's at the City Ground in May.
Yeah, I found the reaction of Leicester fans mad. I mean, you don't want to say who do they think they are, but they're a team that is going to have a points deduction. They've got no money. They're not pushing for the Champions League anymore. So I know they wanted Potter, and Potter would have been a better fit probably, but he was hanging on for a bigger job basically. So Cooper it has the track record to fight fires. He's managed clubs like Forest where there's a lot going on, and he kept us up. He's got a track record everywhere. And then the other one's the reaction of a few Forest fans with you. Don't want to give it too much credence, social media reaction, but some people, you'd think we were managed between a cross between Sam Allardyce and Judas for the last 2 years. The people almost rewriting, what he did for us. There's always this thing, isn't there? It's like, I'll respect him for what he did in the Championship because he did amazingly. And actually, if you look at that first season, we came up. Managers who were given 30 players, a lot of them they didn't choose. Then they get lumped with a load of injuries. You're going to go down 9 times out of 10 in those circumstances. So, yeah, I know people talk about the football, but if you look at Burnley, Company digging his heels in like an absolute moron, got them relegated. Cooper changed tactics after we got tanked by Leicester. I mean, we were a lot more pragmatic, but that was a big factor in us staying up. And then you see people on Twitter saying, we only stayed up because of the fans at the City Ground, or, we only stayed up because Leicester, Southampton, Leeds were crap. Well, no, we got 38 points, and Cooper was a significant factor in that. So, yeah, the questions against Cooper for me and a lot of fans I respect, are game management and evolving a team to play the kind of football that you want them to you want to see more. But he did what he had to do in that first season. What he couldn't do in the second season was evolve us into that attacking team when you had a load of new players. And that's that's his big challenge. And I wish him well. I think he's going to fail at Leicester because the fans don't want him, and they're a bit of a basket case club. But if he's managed in the Premier League and kept us up, then I think he's got every chance of proving himself in the Premier League long term. So yeah, I mean, do you think he's going to bomb at Leicester like I actually do, even though I'm a big fan of him?
Well, I think Leicester are going to bomb, irrespective of whether Steve Cooper's there or not. And that's probably why Potter had a look at it and passed. He's going to wait for a different ride. Doesn't think that one's for him. So yeah, Leicester are in my three to be relegated. I think it's mission impossible without being able to be dexterous in the transfer market if you're starting with that negative points deduction. The last thing I'll say on Cooper is this: divided the fan base towards the end. There was a Cooper out brigade and a Cooper in brigade. But the sacking almost brought all of those fans together and had that moment of reflection of, okay, we've moved on. We've tried something different because we were in a real tough situation. But let's unite in the memory that we have of rocketing through the Championship, having a day out at Wembley, and surviving just prior to the end of the season in that first year. It went a bit south towards the end, but he had a long stint as manager of Nottingham Forest, relatively speaking. Did extremely well for us, and all the debates, discussions, player signings that we're going to have now are largely down to the fact that he got us past the threshold from the Championship to the Premier League. So this is probably the last we should speak of Cooper. I didn't think we'd ever have this discussion again on this podcast, and we're only having it because he's decided to sign for a rival. But he owes us nothing. We owe him nothing. It was a perfect match at a particular point in time. Did extremely well for us. Very interested to see how he molds that squad. He's got Vardy on a gravy train year of his contract, and one or two other players that I don't think can cut it in the Premier League anymore. So interested to see if he gets a tune out of them. I don't expect he will. The odds are stacked against him, but I don't think it's down to Steve Cooper that Leicester are going to get relegated this year. The makeup of the squad, the lack of cash, the challenges that they're going to have with the deduction from the Premier League is going to really hamper them. But interested observer, and as I said before, he'll get a clap from me when he turns over the City ground.
Yeah, I think he will. I think I'm giving too much credence to the minority of Forest fans. Oliver questions the meltdown bit in the headline. That's as much about Leicester fans just going mad about it. So they're starting to petition some Leicester fans to so he wouldn't come in. And then one of the first tweets, as you always get, was Cooper out as soon as he's announced. So yeah, give the guy a chance. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but in a more Forest related stance. Quick question for you as well. Are Leicester really our rivals, going beyond the illusion asks? I mean, really, it's Derby, isn't it? To what degree are Leicester actually rivals for you?
They are now, because we're playing in the same league, so that it will be a keenly contested game, and the chance for local bragging rights, because Derby have fallen off the radar a little bit. But it is a bit of a wind up for them that we give it less credence than Leicester do. It's their big day out. It's the one they've been looking for, and it's at a stage of the season where it could be seismic for either club. So no, the rivalry is not intense as it is with Derby, or possibly even as intense as it is with Sheffield United at this point. I think there's far more needle in those games than Leicester City, but let's see if we are scrapping at a crucial point in the table, then that could be a massive game. But they're probably number 3 on my list of Forest rivalries.
Sheffield United number 2.
Yeah. I just think because those games have been so important, haven't they, in recent years? You can probably trace it back to the playoff semis in 2003, 2004 as well. But yeah, the Sheffield United games felt really loaded in the past few seasons. I think we'll cross paths with them again at some point. I don't know if they'll be promotion contenders from the Championship this year. You'd think so. Joe Worrell might even be in that side if rumours are to be believed. But yeah, Leicester are number 3 for me, behind Blades and the Rams.
I think that's fair. It's kind of like Villa versus Wolves type thing in the Premier League. Like, you want to win for the bragging rights on the day, but it's not like Villa versus Birmingham or Wolves versus Albion or whatever, to give it context of other clubs with other rivalries. But I think you're right. It's not like from our end, it's not a full-on rivalry, I would say. Leicester fans big it up way more, I would say. The other thing about Leicester I was going to ask, like you say, and I totally agree, I think Leicester, you can early favourites, to say the least, to go down. You think Ipswich are going to struggle. Everton's a more interesting one now because it looks like they're going to be taken over and get some money behind them if the Roma owner buys them. But how paramount is it in your mind that we don't get a points deduction to put us behind the 8 ball early on? I know it would probably likely mean we sell Murillo the way it's going, with 10 days before that de facto transfer window, mini transfer window. But how important is it not to get a points deduction in your mind now?
Well, my view is it won't happen because the administration at Forest simply won't allow it to. Once bitten, twice shy. The Premier League have borne their teeth, and it was a surprise when the Everton press release dropped 6 months ago, and Forest realised that they were willing to take on a club that breached the spending rules. I think before that, they were blindly carrying on in light of the Chelsea and Man City scenario, thinking this will be kicked into long grass, not going to affect us this soon. The cogs turn too slowly for this to have a real impact this season, and our focus is on surviving this season. So that was a wake-up call, and it would be untenable is the wrong word, but unthinkable for the same group of people to allow it to happen twice with 12 months warning of the consequence of a breach. So sadly, I think we will see, if it comes to this, plan A is sell fringe players and get to that point without having to sell Gibbs-White or Murillo. But if it came to it, in a week or so's time, we'd have to seriously entertain a bid for one of those players to ensure that we don't breach, because I don't think they'd be forgiven in quite the same way if it was to happen again. Just to have a points deduction in the Premier League for 2 successive seasons, that's bad planning, bad management. They've soft press released it already through John Percy to say that they would have to countenance selling Murillo if they can't generate the funds from the sale of fringe players. So by hook or by crook, we'll be within the spending limits and we'll start on 0.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think that it's the timescale, isn't it? It's 10 days to sell a load of fringe players. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't understand where the Mangala money fits into it. If that fits and that's part of the 20 million, that's not really been made clear, then it makes it more plausible, but still difficult. So yeah, I think for me, Murillo still, I believe, will go, because I can't, like you say, countenance another points deduction. I think it'd be such a setback psychologically for the players. I know people are sort of on board with it. I don't know what percentage it would be. A small percentage of fans, I would say, are on board with it, but it's definitely not one for me, certainly. Just before we move on to some transfer chat, obviously, England are playing today, so there's still time to get your tickets to watch the Denmark game at the Trent Navigation. If you're watching on YouTube, then you can scan the QR code or go to gigantic.com, and then the third group game, you can get tickets for that. I've forgotten who else is in our group. Who else is in our group?
Slovenia.
Thank you. I was just about to say how much I'm enjoying the Euros, and I've forgotten who else we're playing. Have you been watching? So obviously you're working and you're busy, but I've managed to watch quite a lot. How much of it have you seen? It's a really good tournament now.
Might have a little telly in the corner, Matt, to be honest, just out of from the knockout game onwards, I'll watch every game. From now, I've had an interest in England and Scotland, and certainly seen all the highlights. I think the traditional powers look strong. Germany are always there or thereabouts, aren't they? They get themselves into the conversation, and players like Füllkrug and one or two others that I was less familiar with, I can see how they might be part of a team which still has some very experienced players in there. Thomas Muller still knocking about, Leroy Sané and the like. They look solid. Never write off France or Spain. I love a couple of the Italian players as well. But I think we'll be in the mix. You have to grow into a tournament to win it. Our group is testing without really being stretching, and the wealth of players, creative players we have wide and in the 10 spot, because Kane's an automatic pick. mean that we could cope if one or two went down. And Bellingham's X factor. We talk about what the Forest midfield needs and that balance between a 6, an 8, and a 10. He's a 6, an 8, and a 10 rolled into one, and has a player like Declan Rice able to mop up around him and afford him the freedom to do what he needs to do. So real shame that we've never seen him play in the Premier League, because he's a generational talent and he's a winner, isn't he? He gets teams across the line, makes things spark when nothing's happening. So my prediction is England to reach the final and Jude Bellingham to be the telling reason why they do.
I can clip that up when that happens, then you can look smart. I'm really enjoying actually the so-called smaller nations like Turkey v Georgia. It was just one of the great games, and I saw bits of Croatia v Albania. But this is a bit of a spoiler for an upcoming one podcast, but I recorded one with Nathan Tyson this morning, and we were just talking about how the Premier League, especially the top end of the Premier League, is so formulaic and sanitized. And I guess Man City are the biggest architects of this, but trying to score the same goal over and over again, rather than just like shooting outside the box and stuff like, which we've seen so much of in this tournament, and it's quite refreshing. So I'm really enjoying it. We'll get back to some Forest chat, obviously, but there's 200 people with us, which is great. About 3 minutes notice, I think there was for this. So if you haven't already, do us a favour and just hit like on the video. It makes a big difference. Right, transfer chat. I discussed this a little bit yesterday with Paul Lindsay, our guest. It's nice to get a different take. First of all, Eric da Silva Moreira, Sky Sports Germany, saying we're going to sign him. And now Fabrizio Romano saying it's close as well. He's a Mendes boy, so it fits in quite well. 1.5 million from St Pauli, a German, well, they're a Bundesliga club now. They got promoted. He's only played one first-team game for them, but he's a German under-17 World Cup winner, and we know how good they have been for England, a lot of them. What do you make on the deal in principle, with only having seen the dreaded YouTube highlights that can say anything about a player?
So what do I learn from the YouTube highlights? Flair player, carries the ball really progressively, tries things. There's a clip you'll have seen of him megging his opposite fullback and carrying the ball 60, 70 yards. Can finish, seems very composed on the ball, goal scorer. Arriving late, arriving from deep, very comfortable on the ball, and high potential player at a very young age. Love St Pauli. I was in Hamburg quite recently, actually, and anyone that knows the kind of history and social fabric of that club, really interesting story, and they've got themselves promoted to the Bundesliga. But we're trading in a manner which demonstrates we're out to make a profit in the transfer market, and that's going to be so important whilst we've got 30,000 seats and we're trying to compete with teams that have got 45, 50,000 and more developed commercial partnerships that allow them to get the income to a point where they can afford the players who are going to kick us on and kick us up. So he's not first team ready. He's going to find himself out on loan. He may even find himself traded in 2, 3, 4 years' time, hopefully for profit without ever setting foot on a pitch. But part of the machinery required to get our turnover and income to a point where we can support an improved first team is to sign players of this profile rather than 30, 31-year-old bench warmers who might have a short-term impact and have to be moved on. See John Joe Shelby, for example. So see the sense of it, like the profile of it. Of course, you get excited when you see a YouTube clip, but he might be playing at dog and duck level for all we know in these obscure games that get clipped up. But I think he's a player that we've identified will be sold for profit in a few years' time. If he can have an influence on the first team in the meantime, great. If he's going to be the example I used was a Patrick Bamford at Chelsea, where they signed for 3, sell for 10, and he barely meets the first team, so be it. That's where we're at now. That's what we have to do. And his credentials suggest that he's going to improve and become match ready for some team in some European league at some point, and will benefit because we're paying £1.5 million on the way in.
There's a question for you that's come in, which I'll ask towards the end. I mean, if anyone's got any other questions, an impromptu 5-minute Q&A at the end, if anyone's got any, then drop them in and we'll do that before we have to go. I think Temps is free for another 15 minutes or so. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's great business in principle. Even if the one doesn't happen, the theory is sound. I guess the only slight worry, and I don't sign up to this at all is that it's blocking the pathway for another young prospect coming through our academy. But I think this is the way you have to trade, you have to deal to be successful. And like Temp says, I'd much rather sign a young prospect than blow a load of money on a player who is past it, really. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with it. Sticking to that principle, Temps as well. We're also linked with another Palmeiras player, having signed Danilo from them. 17-year-old Riquelme, 4.5 million is the touted price tag. Linked with Porto and PSG. Doing very well in the Palmeiras under-20s. He's a Brazil under-17 international. And interestingly, Nathan George, who was on our show last week, I was trying to find the clip, I couldn't find it, talking about how big under-20s football is in Brazil. It sounds like it's different to ours. It gets big crowds. It sounds like it's a bit more physically testing and taken more seriously. Not more seriously, that's the wrong way to phrase it. But it's a more immediate step to first team football, perhaps at your club. So again, sounds interesting. Probably isn't one that's going to happen, but you like the theory of this one, especially you might be a bit more further along than Moreira by the sound of it.
This one sounds a little bit more rumour mill, doesn't it? Particularly when there's other European clubs of that ilk linked with him as well. But they're not first team ready players. Again, PSG aren't signing a 17-year-old from Brazil, a relative unknown, to go into their first team. They want to loan him around Europe and see upside when they sell him in a few years' time. So I think there's going to be countless names of this type. I give this one less credence than the boy from St Pauli, but again, indicative that we have a transfer policy of trying to find players in a market that we have an advantage in, polish them up, loan them out, develop them, sell them on if they're not first team ready. It's sound logic. And it's probably the reason why we're going to continue to have relatively chaotic transfer windows. Because even if we are looking for 4 or 5 boys to improve the spine of the Forest first team, there's going to be another department of development players to be loaned out, chucked around Europe or wherever else. I don't think we're buying players like this at fees to stockpile them in and play them in Premier League 2 and 4 cup games a year. I genuinely believe they come in with a 2-3 year plan to get them to a point where they're worth more. I don't think we're trying to stockpile and win, the Premier League 2. I think that'd be futile. They need to play first team football at a level which is applicable to them. Let's say, for example, that's the Greek Super League or the Dutch League or wherever it might be. That's the process that I see behind signings of this profile.
Yeah, I guess that fits in a little bit with the Stamenic one. Is that his name? I think it is. The one we discussed the other day with Pete, the defensive midfielder. Right, we've had loads of questions, so we're going to have to blitz through these now, probably more than I expected. So I'll just go back to the first one, see how many we can get through. Going beyond the illusion, do you think we'll look at free transfers? Ross Barkley was a good one for Luton. It can be a fruitful market, can be a risky one. I think, do you have to get them early so you can get them in for pre-season, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's going to be a player that's been passed up generally through relegation or some kind of financial issue at their club to be available as a free agent. Ross Barkley's the golden example, isn't he, from last year, where he was really effective in a struggling Luton team. But see Jesse Lingard for the risks of this kind of thing going well, because free transfers are aware that in not attracting a fee, they can command inflated salaries or signing on fees, which don't necessarily make them a genuine free transfer. That they command a premium off the back of allowing their contract to lapse if they're sought after. If they're not, there's a reason. Are they fading? Have they struggled elsewhere? Are they hard to live with? Do they have some kind of underlying injury concern? So I'd tread really carefully in that market. I don't think it's plan A. We were a little bit reactionary, weren't we, after our first couple of games in the Premier League, where we struggled and then signed an older profile of player, Czech Koyate, for example, one or two others in that kind of mould. So I'd take available players on their merit. I'd be sold a bit more if they were game-ready, Premier League experienced, slightly battle-hardened individuals who were able to commit for a year or so of a kind of Barkley ilk. But I'd tread really, really carefully if we saw the kind of name that we would have been excited 2-3 years ago, who's simply faded and now finds himself surplus requirements at other Premier League clubs.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the other thing is, I know they're free, but their wages tend to be really high. Because they're free, you pay them a signing on fee, you give them a good salary. And if you look at our wage bill in the Premier League table for last season, it was relatively high, I would say, and that's gets you into PSR trouble as well. So I would rather trade younger, trade lower. Yes, you need obviously you need that Premier League experience as well. They have to be really targeted signings. So taking a bit of a punt on a free transfer now, where we are at as a slightly more established Premier League club, is not something I'd be so keen on compared to, Jesse Lingard 2 years ago would be a lot more appealing now than that kind of signing, I would say. We've mostly tackled Stephen's question, so I'll just go through it quickly. We've certainly done the how will he get on at Leicester bit. And I won't relitigate, do you think the sacking thing, particularly I would say yes, by the end, then his time was up, much as we loved Steve Cooper. Got a few more to go through. One from Derek. This is sort of on the profile of players again. What are the chances of going for Tammy Abraham? I've always liked him, think he'd be perfect for us. Shea Adams is utterly woeful, and I hope he's not a serious option. It's a bit harsh on Shea Adams, isn't it? I don't know. What do you think, Tam?
I'd prefer Tammy Abraham. I'm still haunted by that hat-trick he scored for Villa when he was being loaned out and benefiting from championship experience. Was it Roma for a bit? Tammy Abraham, is that right?
He's still at Roma, yeah.
Yeah, effective player. I think he could come back into the Premier League and do damage. And yes, I would rank him above Shea Adams.
I'll put this. Going back to pre-transfers, Rafi makes a good point here. Ola Aina especially, that younger 24-year-old type player with a point to prove, who can come in. Yeah, that's the kind of free transfer that I like. Really hard to find. We did really well there. That was good business. Yeah. We do make some really good signings. We make some really duff signings as well. But yeah, were you going to add to that then? Sorry.
Well, Aina, thoroughly scouted, pedigree in the UK, familiar with the Premier League, good exposure in the Championship and Chelsea, did well against Forest. I think he was on loan at Hull City in quite an obscure part of his career. But not only is he more than comfortable as a Premier League starting left back, he can cover right back as well. Endurance, eye for a goal. There's that one he slotted into the corner against Villa. Really, really impressive. Aurier first season, we were critical. I was critical when he first landed. Became a model of consistency for a bit and kept some really effective players quiet. Faded second season. So yeah, from Rafiq, two positive examples there. And Aina for me is now performing to a level and a consistency where I think other Premier League clubs will be looking at him as an option. Consistency, utility value, right age profile. He's a player we've added a lot of value to.
I'll take one more quick Cooper question because people are dropping them in, so we should try and respect as many as we can. I can't speak for the whole fan base, but I suspect he'll get a very good reception and get a nice clap. So thanks for the question, Warren. This is a difficult question to answer from Rafiq. How do you explain relegated teams each having a player last season that created more chances per 90 than Morgan Gibbs-White? What do you think about that? It's hard question to answer. Is that saying Morgan should be creating more, or we're not helping him out enough? I don't know.
Have you had the backlash yet from those that have seen Gary Birtles describe Morgan Gibbs-White at the live show? Okay, that'll come, I'm sure, from anybody that watches. A relatively extreme view, I think. But Gary's point stands that we're hard on Morgan at times because we know how good he is and how good he can be. We watched the game against Fulham where he's absolutely ran it, looked like a worldie for 90 minutes, tormented a team, been involved in every single positive element that we do. And we expect that minute after minute, game after game. I think Morgan Gibbs-White could, in 2-3 seasons' time, be a sought-after player for a top 8 Premier League club, rating that highly. Learning curve's been pretty steep. He's been in a struggling side off the back of a successful loan at Sheffield United, who were there or thereabouts in the Championship. But we've taken a chance on a player who's not a proven Premier League player to be the guy that we build the team around. I genuinely still believe he's first name on the team sheet, and everything that we do positively should go through him. When he plays well, we play well. When he struggles, we look a bit lackluster going forwards. So what does he need to change? It's not the creativity or his ability to beat a player, his ability to break a field, his ability to expose a scrambled defence, how good he is in transition. It's how consistently he scores or assists. And if he can add those numbers to the things we see with our eyes that don't get rewarded or reflected in stats, that just sheer creativity, the fact that he tries things and they when they come off, they look great. He sees things that no one else sees. We just want to see that production. And I think a reasonable target for Morgan Gibbs-White next year should be something in the region of 15 goals and assists, combined goals and assists. If he's doing that, or if that number jumps to 20, he's being really effective in an improving team. If that number is 10, sub 10, we're not quite seeing him fulfill the potential and the faith that we're putting in him, because we are building a side around Morgan Gibbs-White. I think he deserves that. I think he can grow into it and become worthy of that. But Gary really hammered the point that he's not there yet. He absolutely can be.
Yeah, I was going to say 20 goal contributions. I think it was 5 goals, 10 assists this season, but I'd be looking, especially at the goals column, if he can get into double figures for goals or 8 goals or something, because assists can be a little bit of a false thing, because you can pass a ball and someone can smash it in from 20 yards, or you can have a really good contribution in a goal that isn't the assist, it's the pass before and stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, I would just look for him to add a few more goals that will push him higher up the England reckoning. Certainly, if he can hone his shooting a little bit more. Let's try and rattle through a few more quickly. I missed Chris's question here. This is quite a big detailed question, so I'll give you a couple of seconds to answer in a very short, unsatisfactory fashion. Do you think we should put more the training ground, the academy, as more of a priority than the stadium if we're going down the route of buying young talent to make a profit? Well, the training ground and the academy are free from FFP constriction, so you can pump money into those. But what do you think about the principle that Chris raises?
Yeah, look, Forest want more space. So it was only Billy Davis that pointed out, why are we training at St Pauli on the banks of the Trent when we've got this shiny academy around the corner? And he relocated the first team to the academy training base. So the footprint of that is such that there probably aren't enough pitches to run an academy and a Premier League football team. And Forest will be very mindful of that. So yes, they would like to invest in that. I think they see it as one and the same, the stadium issue and the training ground issue. They need more space. There's an old adage from Pep Guardiola. I think he said, give me 200 players, meaning from age group to first team. Give me 200 players and 20 pitches, and I'll win you Premier Leagues and European Cups. Ultimately, it comes down to that. The facility challenge is real for us at Trent Bridge and for the administration at Forest. The ground and the training ground are falling behind, and it's something they would love to improve.
A lot of people kind of make this comment from Patch Adams: sell players to Olympiacos just for as much money as you want. Well, the transfer window in Greece opens in July, so I don't think we can do that anyway. And the rules are much tighter now around you can't do that. But he does make a good point about Chelsea selling hotels and stuff like that. And when I spoke to Kieran Maguire, he did say, "Why don't Forest sell property?" I don't know how much they don't own enough, but it is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a thing. So there's a rule in PSR called related party transactions. So things like Man City having a sponsorship deal with a state-owned company, that's a related party transaction. So it's treated very differently. If Mr. Anakis was to launch a gambling firm and sponsor Forest for 50 million quid, that's a related party transaction and can't be seen as income. So the scrutiny of the Premier League is sharper than ever before. And whilst all these workarounds existed historically, including selling your own ground to a shell company and leasing it back, all these things that other clubs have tried. I think that was a couple of championship clubs were legitimately able to prove that was income. Sell the City ground for 100 million, lease it back off yourself. Premier League are wise to this now, and they've tightened a lot of loopholes. So no, I don't think Forest should be selling bakeries to fund strikers.
Good. I think that covers all the questions. David's calling me out on my headline for this again. The meltdown's about Leicester fans as well, David. That was the one.
Bit Daily Mail, that headline. Man, bit shouty.
I know, and I do try and avoid that kind of clickbaity thing, having worked for Reach, who love that kind of style of headline. That's one of the things I try to avoid. So that's the justification for it on this occasion. Sell the club shop and buy a new one, a £20 million club shop, or maybe we could do that. for the right land deal. Yeah. Right. I think that covers just about everything. Thanks everyone for dropping those questions in. I told Temps we'd be 20 minutes probably, and we've done 35. So that's par for the course. Do us a favor, if you haven't already, hit like on the video and give us a lovely review on iTunes, subscribe to the channel, etc., etc. Right. Anything you want to add before we go, Temps?
Notts Outlaws v Derbyshire Falcons, Trent Bridge tomorrow night at 6:30. Weather's coming out. Come and support us.
Yeah, there you go. Do that. What day is it? Thursday. I don't think we'll be doing anything now until Monday, although we weren't going to do this. So who knows? Keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled, and we might see you soon. But good to have 300 plus people with us at no notice. And thanks for everyone for chipping in. To
England prediction, Matt? England prediction for tonight?
What did Denmark? Denmark drew their first game, didn't they? I think we'll win. I think we'll go 1-0 up, and then we'll play the same way we always play, and we'll probably get away with it. But yeah, like I'm not quite as optimistic as you about our longer prospects, just because the way we set up. But I said this the other day, I did really like Gahey's contribution in what could be a pretty rocky defence, and hopefully we get Luke Shaw back. But yeah, 1-0 England, and we'll take it from there. Well, we never do score predictions because Forest ones are pointless because we just say they'll win. But what are you going to say about England for you then?
They'll come at us more, got a bit more about them. We'll pick them off. 3-0 England, Kane to score first. Put that on your ACCA.
3-0?
Yeah. Southgate's going to rip off the waistcoat, rip off the shackles and get amongst it tonight. I can feel it.
That's a bold prediction. I haven't seen that for a few years, but yeah, hopefully so. Enjoy the England game, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the Euros. And if we don't see you tomorrow, then we shall see you soon.